In South Africa and globally, the retail sector is a challenging place to be, with all the innovation and technological development driving that customer experience and the customer's expectation, of course, in a highly competitive environment where if you miss a trick, you fall behind. Joining us now in studio is Roy Alves, who is Country Manager for AXIS Communication. More on those innovations. Set the scene for us here, the things they can do that the customer knows about. Behind the scenes, maybe there's a lot more. How sophisticated are these retailers able to get?
Sure, thanks David. Very much like a smartphone or tablet, where you've got the ability to go onto your app store and download applications. We have the same functionality in the cameras. So retailers would normally install security cameras in their sort of retail store, can now go in a little drop-down box and select the applications that are pertinent to his store, which is really cool. And a few years ago when we spoke about video analytics, it was quite tricky and you had a lot of false alarms and there was kind of a misnomer on these video analytics. But today, as technology has improved and we've seen performance in the camera, and a lot better analytics being written, you can start doing some very clever things.
Give us an example of a supermarket and what they would find out.
So in many instances, a lot of the supermarkets want to know their foot traffic. This is a very interesting thing for him. So I want to be able to count the number of people walking into my store. And what you can start then looking at is, based on a certain day of the week and a certain week of the month, you can start looking at certain times where you're going to have a lot of people coming in. And sometimes you would look at the tills and say, okay, we had so many transactions for the day. The question is, how many people did you have in your store versus the transactions? Could be an interesting one. So I know the transactions, let me tally that up with the number of people. So am I having people drop off? So am I having 1,000 people walk into my store, but I'm only having 500 transactions, for instance? So you kind of want to try and marry the two and get them as close as possible. So that's quite popular. I think the second one that we're seeing that's also very interesting is the ability to do gender analytics and even age determination, even to be able to see if people are in a good mood or a bad mood. So the cameras would tell you that at a certain time of the day, you know.
I can tell you, isn't it? The men are in a bad mood because they've been dragged along to shop, and the women are in a good mood.
Exactly. No, I saw Google laughing there. But that becomes very interesting. So if I'm, let's say, a pharmaceutical type retailer, and I've got an audience of, let's say, teenage ladies there, or sort of 18, 19-year-old, maybe I'm going to have advertising displayed on electronic media that is directed at them. It might be pimple cream or maybe a suntan lotion, depending on the, but based on that audience, as opposed to if it's an older demographic. So you don't want to start saying pimple cream to 50-year-olds, I'd say.
Instead, you need what, wrinkle fillers? I don't even know because I'm not there yet. Of course not. But how do you merge the bricks and mortar element? Because we hear about this trend regarding millennials and online shopping and e-commerce, and that also is actually quite easy to get the data and analytics. But how do you merge the bricks and mortar element with e-commerce? Is there a strategy that we see in South Africa there?
Absolutely, it's a good question. I mean, if we've been talking about this for a number of years. I mean, we are starting to see a trend in the retail space where people in South Africa are starting to buy more and more online. But the thing that's interesting, they're still going to the stores to go for the experience. They still want to touch and feel it, which you don't get on an online sort of store. So the concept is we still want to retain that customer walking to my store. I still want to create a nice shopping environment for that person. In the online stores, it's very easy. A person logs in, you've got very good information on them. So you can start targeting advertising based on their buying criteria. But in bricks and mortar, how do we do that? You want to start using some intelligent technology, which is what we're doing in the cameras.
At what point does it start becoming Big Brother, intruding on the shopper's privacy, where there's all this information that they're taking from you and you don't even know? Are there ethical issues here?
Well, I think that's open for discussion. I think, we talk about the pre and post 9/11, I think is a good way of looking at it. Prior to 9/11 happening, people were very apprehensive about cameras in public spaces. 9/11 happens, there's a complete 180 degree. People are then saying, I'd rather have my safety rather than giving up. So I think it depends. I would say in South Africa, I think people are more interested in knowing that they're safe, and they would go to a shopping centre that's invested in security. So it's quite debatable.
When it comes to technology, though, who does the onus rest on? Is it the tenant in the shopping mall? Is it the landlords themselves who need to develop these spaces and technologies? I've also heard of a trend called beacons, where people walk in and again they can measure how long they're in a particular search spot within the store for. Is that a new dynamic true?
Absolutely. So it's two parts to the question. Generally, the tenants are responsible for the security. So the sensor management in the shopping centres would be responsible for the security of the actual sensor, but the in-store would be the tenant's responsibility. So beacons have been actively used for many years. What we are seeing a lot of today is cameras doing a lot of that what we call heat mapping, meaning that I put a lot of hemispherical cameras or 360-degree cameras into the ceiling, and I can look at a floor plan. I can see exactly where people are walking, for instance, and spending the majority of their time. And what the retailers are then doing is merchandising that foot traffic, or call it that face value that they're getting from those customers at a higher rate than maybe some of the areas of the shop. So there's credible information there.
Surely this must, I always wonder with the cell phone business why they can't eliminate crime completely because of the technology that's available. Surely this should eliminate shoplifting, shrinkage by staff and by customers?
Absolutely. I mean, have you heard of the expression sweetheart scanning? Are you familiar with that phrase? No. So sweetheart scanning is quite an interesting thing. It's you and I in cahoots. You the teller, I'm the customer. So I walk into the store, I give you maybe a carton of cigarettes, but you ring up a box of matches. So it's called sweetheart. So there's collusion between, okay, so now what we can do is we start analyzing the till slips. So if there's 10 tellers and one of them sold, let's say, 20 boxes of matches, let's say, but everyone else has sold one, that's anonymously. Let's go and investigate that. And we'll tie that up with the video evidence. So I then can see a box of matches being rung up, but I see a carton of cigarettes going down the till boat. Okay, so sweetheart scanning is a big one. But the one that I could talk about, David, which is fantastic, is queue management. Because we all hate standing in queues, I think.
And of course, the sweets in the aisles that, get you to buy a few little extra items.
Especially when you've got all the kids with you.
We'll have to stop it there and we'll have to get you in again. Fascinating stuff. And of course, we all experience this because we all go to the shops willingly or unwillingly at some time. That's Roy Alves, who is country manager for AXIS Communications.